Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the third part in our series. And we have been discussing retirement strategies. And today we're going to go into retirement clubs. And who better to tell us all about that than Roger Whitney, my friend and host of the Retirement Answer Man podcast, which is a fabulous podcast, by the way. Listen to it myself. And he's also the founder of the Rocky Retirement Club. And I am so glad to have you back with us today, Roger. Thanks for joining us. Tell us, what is a retirement club and what led you to start one?
Well, before I do that, I want full disclosure. I do not wear the same shirt multiple days in a row. We're knocking these out.
Me either. So thanks.
We didn't do a wardrobe change, but we wanted to make it in bite-sized pieces. And so I'm sorry, what was your question?
My question is all about the Rock Retirement Club and what led you to start a retirement club. So I'm sure some of my audience has probably never even heard of such a thing. Tell us what that means.
I didn't really know of anything when we started it. So it's coming up on its 3-year anniversary. And it started out as an experiment from the podcast, because our podcast, Retirement Answer Man, has been around for 7 years. And so we have a pretty good size audience and really engaged people. So we started as an experiment. And the reason I did is because when you're navigating retirement, there's this big gap where there's really nothing to help people. So like on one end, you have total DIY or do it yourself, or you're reading magazines, you're watching YouTube videos, and there's a lot of great education to get from there. And there's a lot of things that are wrong. And then on the other extreme, you have working with a financial planner or an advisor, which really isn't for everybody. Either because you can't afford it, or you want to maintain control of it. And there's not a lot in the middle.
Yeah.
Where people can get world-class education and tools and conversation to walk their own journey and be empowered to do things. And so that's what we set out to do with the Rock Retirement Club, which is essentially give you everything to be able to build your own retirement plan. So that is an on-demand masterclass that walks you step by step through my process, and then give you the tools through spreadsheets and calculators to execute on that strategy. And then 3, and this is the hard part with a lot of online education, is when you get stuck. Well, how do I account for this? Or I'm not understanding that. Have access to myself and my team to help get you unstuck so you can really dial in your plan. And then lastly, and you mentioned it a little bit last week, is to have a safe place to have discussions where you're talking to people with the same spirit in the same stage of life, so you can learn from each other. And it's hard to find that on the internet. And so when I define safe space, Danielle, what I mean is, and we've, I think, accomplished this very well, solution-minded people that are kind. There's never a dumb question. So we don't have any trolls. We don't talk politics. And within the clubhouse, there's never a sale. There's no upsell once you're in the club, because a lot of the internet ends up being this huge infomercial where you just get nurtured to something. And so the content is meant to be pure education and a safe place to have these really important discussions.
Yeah, and I love that concept, because there is a degree of feeling unsafe when you're heading into a part of your life that you've never been in before. There's hurdles there that you've not encountered. You may or may not have people in your own life around you who have good retirement advice. And like you said, sometimes you're doing the do-it-yourself thing and you can find information that necessarily isn't right. So the idea here being where you could come together with other like-minded people, have a team that have some expertise in this, like yourself and your staff, and then be able to learn from the ones around you. Like, what a cool thing. So tell us, who is a retirement club like this for?
Well, the retirement club is for someone who really wants to, that are less focused on investing for investing's sake and really seeing that retirement, you're within 5 years either side of retirement, and really want to make sure that you rock retirement. And what we mean by that is where all of your financial decisions intersect with the vision you have for this one chance of this life of freedom. because there aren't any do-overs.
Yeah.
And so money is important, but it's really a tool to create this kind of life. And so that's one reason why in the club, we have some very geeky discussions on technical stuff, but we also have a lot of discussions on the big rocks that we've talked about and the non-financial aspects of the change in life of going from being in full-time work to what do you do every day when you retire? How do you fill up your days? You know, who are you going to do things with if you've lost your colleagues, and making sure we navigate the non-financial part of it as well.
Yeah, I like the life aspect too, because there's all sorts of things that could come at you there. I've seen in my own client base before women that were lifelong friends who decided to buy a home together in their retirement because we can help and support each other. And I have had one or two clients who were married and got their own apartments because they decided they could live together better after retirement if they had their own space because she or he wasn't used to the person being around. And so I think there's a lot of individual things going on in everyone's own personal lives. And the change is such a great one that having a community where you could go and see the way other people might be doing it instead of trying to find that information online is really cool.
Because we're always trying to figure out, okay, what am I missing? Right? Where are my
Yeah.
blind spots? And that's one thing when you have a team of coaches, including myself, that are being able to speak about this in a more 360 way. And also you have all this community of people, and you wrap that around the education that everybody is creating the same structure or plan. I have two really good stories that illustrate what you're talking about that community. Number one was early on, a gentleman who wanted to live full-time in an RV
Mm-hmm.
and retire and was trying to decide it. And this is probably 6 months into the club, because he emailed me after the fact. He's like, Roger, I got in there and I connected with so-and-so, and they've been living the lifestyle that my wife and I are thinking about, but they've been doing it for 4 or 5 years. And he just got this master class from someone who actually has done it. But
So
also
cool.
what he got was, by seeing somebody doing what they want to do, it's sort of like breaking the 4-minute mile. As soon as you encounter somebody that's done it, you're like, I could do that too. And that changed his perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And then probably my favorite story over the last 3 years was, I was having a private office hours, because I have private office hours for the club. And I was talking to this member, and she was, say, 60. And she was telling me how she always wanted to go to Europe. That had been her dream for years. And she was planning on doing it in the next 5 or 6 years. And then it's very clear that financially she's fine. She could afford it. And then, so she wants to go to Europe, always dreamed about it. She's financially fine. And then she starts telling me about her family, and one of her parents is blind because they have this degenerative, disease. And, oh, by the way, it may be genetic. I don't know if I have it or not. And my younger sister is starting to see signs of it. And so what I hear is, I've always wanted to go to Europe. It's clear she has the money. One of her parents had this issue and is blind. She doesn't know if she has it. And one of her younger sisters is experiencing some of the things. And, my knee-jerk comment, why are you waiting to go to
Go
Europe?
now.
And I said that, and she was like, this big light bulb went off. Really? And so what we did from that meeting, she wanted to stay anonymous. So I said, I'm going to take this question with your permission. And I held a meetup in the club, and we had probably 50 people on there. And I posed the question, and over an hour, what we did was brainstorm. Well, one, people just came out of the woodworks and gave encouragement for her, even though they didn't know who she was, to do this. And then we brainstormed, okay, where are the best places to go in Europe? Because a lot of people had gone, what
Yeah.
restaurants they liked, what hotels they liked, what they didn't like. And in that hour, we just brainstormed this together. And then we curated that and created what do we call it? Like a Europe guide. We made it this big PDF. And then probably about 6 months later, I was getting photos from her in London and in Central Europe and all these
So
different
cool.
places. And she was just giddy. And that was, I think, personally cool enough. I mean, it almost brings me to tears. But now think about it now. if we didn't have that conversation and she was waiting 5 years, what have we gone through in the last year with COVID?
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't go to Europe, and Europe will still be wonderful when we're through all this, but it may never be the same. And she may never have gone
Yeah.
and so that's, I think, the power of having a really special group where you can get great education and support, but also support each other during a really important time of life.
Yeah, I love those examples. And it reminds me too of for many years, we have helped people that live the RV lifestyle with a group out of Livingston, Texas. And I hear all the great stories and what they've put together. And they have a community online where they do talk about how to live the RV lifestyle. And some of the stories they've told me were things I never knew, which is there's programs out there where you can join this group and they'll forward their mail to you. And those are all the kind of things that you would have to figure out if you're new to something like that. And you're also at this scary time when trying something new, you know, it's not as easy as it maybe used to be because you don't have an income to fall back on to do that differently or make up for something that might have been expensive or cost more than you thought. I think that when you've got this money and an income stream that you've put together, but you also know that there's some aspect of that that's kind of finite, those decisions feel a little bigger. And so that community becomes even more important.
Yeah, we start the master class that helps people put together their plan. We start it with Bronnie Ware's 5 Regrets in Life. And so Bronnie Ware wrote a book. She was a hospice nurse in Australia. I forget how long ago she wrote the work. And she identified from working with people at the end of life what their regrets were. I don't have the 5 in front of me, but it was, number 1 was, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself and not what people expected to me. I wish I would have allowed myself to be happier. I wish I would have stayed in touch with friends. Those type of regrets, when you're early, the key with those little pearls of wisdom is the numbers are really important, right? The money stuff is really important. But what ends up happening when we can't give ourselves permission because we don't have a good process or the right people around us, it's very easy to deny ourselves in order to be prudent and safe. And dying with too much money is a tragedy. Not because it's money that you could have spent, but it's money that you could have created experiences, not just for you, but also for your kids or your grandkids, et cetera. And so that's why a process is so important, to try to minimize all those regrets that we know people have.
Yeah. And to take some of the dollars that you've invested wisely over the years and live your life, what you have remaining of it, to the fullest. And sometimes I think in today's day and age, when we have a long retirement in front of us, I mean, people living 20 and 30 years, certainly far different than, back in 1965 when Medicare was created and the life expectancy was shorter. There's somewhat of the fear of not having enough money to go to the distance. But on the flip side of that, like you said, you also don't want to retire and have this huge bucket of money and all those lists of regrets that you maybe wish you had done, and the kind of memories that your kids might have if you had taken that family vacation that you'd always dreamed of, or let your children take you to Europe. All the things that I would imagine most people would not want to regret at the end of their life.
Yeah, we generally regret what we didn't do, right?
Yeah.
And go back to that teeter-totter. I want to have a great life today, but I want to be okay later on. Absent a really well thought out process and people to help get you unstuck and other people on the same journey, it's very easy to live an unbalanced life and deny yourself just to make sure you're okay when you're 90.
Yeah.
You got to find the balance. And so like we've been talking about this last 2.5, 3 weeks. So Danielle's mother.
Hi, Mom.
Yeah. Leaving money at the end can be a beautiful thing, but I'll be honest with you. I remember when my mom passed away and she died at 48 and I was down here in Texas and she was in Michigan. I got a very small inheritance and that came to me via a check probably a year after she passed and was very impersonal. So when you have things that you want for your children, might it not make sense to think, how could I spend this money to create the environment to create the memories for Danielle and the children and everything else? Both are good, but you want to make sure you're maximizing that and not just thinking about the money at the end.
Yeah, of course. It leads me to remember I took a few years back, I took a week-long whitewater rafting trip down the Grand Canyon, Colorado River.
Oh, I've done that. It's
You
awesome.
have? Oh my gosh, the experience of a lifetime. And at that point in my life, it was a significant expense for me to go and do that kind of travel, because a week down there, there's the flights getting all the way out to Vegas and then getting from there to the Grand Canyon, and then the cost of the trip itself and all of the travel in there. And I remember telling my mom, because this was a trip that my uncles put together on her side of the family, and they invited me to go. I've been close with them all my life. And she was like, is that going to just be a little odd out there? It's going to be all the uncles and she said, and that's an awful long way to go. And I said, someday, if there comes a time where I'm fortunate enough to live long enough that they're not around anymore, these are memories that I will never lose. Like, I will have this amazing memory from this money that I spent to do this trip of a lifetime with them. And it was the trip of a lifetime. And of course, they're all still around, and we love to tell our stories of the rafting. We could regale you for days with all of our stories about that trip. But it does make a point that I really think was a good one that you're bringing about, that it's not just about you. Some of that money that you do spend in retirement is going to be things that your kids will always remember, and the people that loved you. And I think that's obviously one of the benefits of joining a club like yours and hearing those stories from other people around you, and new friendships, I'm sure, that they make sometimes in your club, and that must be really rewarding for you. So tell us, how can one learn more about trying out a club like yours?
So you can go to rockretirementclub.com, and we explain everything that's included. There's a cost because we want to, one, make it profitable so it is a safe place, but also have it be something of importance. But you get a 30-day free trial. So if it's not for you, you can easily unwind it, but you can learn more about it at rockretirementclub.com.
Very cool. And I didn't know that it started with a masterclass. So that's kind of neat. You're going to get to come in and do sort of a course to orient you with everything, and then experience the rest of the benefits as you go forward.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, very cool, Roger. Thank you for spending this series on YouTube with me, talking about some really important things about spending money in retirement and having money in retirement and the plans we put in place. And I would encourage all of our listeners not only to go and check out the Rock Retirement Club and consider joining to see if you can find the kind of camaraderie and good planning that a club like this would bring to you. But if you have an opportunity to also subscribe to Roger's podcast, it truly is one of the best out there. It's the Retirement Answer Man podcast. And of course, you certainly can hear more and learn more about the club there too, I'm sure. Roger, thanks so much. It was great having you.
Have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye, Mom.